We'll move on to our program. Dave, would you like to introduce our speaker?
Yes, I would like to. Thank you. So it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Miles K. Davis, who is the 20th president of Linfield University. Davis has a PhD in Human and Organizational Sciences from the George Washington University, an MA in Human Resource Development from Bowie State University, and a BA in Communications from Duquesne University. He was the inaugural chair of the Management Science Department at the Harry F. Byrd Jr. School of Business at Shenandoah University and became the founding director of its Institute for Entrepreneurship. Dr. Davis went on to become the dean of the Harry F. Byrd Jr. School of Business. Dr. Davis is an authority on entrepreneurship whose most recent work focuses on integrity, values, and principles in the business world, as well as faith-based entrepreneurship. He helps organizations manage cultural and structural changes, strategic planning, leadership development, and strategic growth initiatives. He is a member of the Society of Leadership Fellows at St. George's House, the first non-UK based member, an organization based out of Windsor Castle in England that brings together world leaders in a variety of fields to analyze contemporary issues. Davis is also the first college president to come out of the PhD Project, a network that helps members of underrepresented communities attain doctorates and become leaders in higher education. Recently, Dr. Davis was voted in as chair of the board of directors of the Oregon Alliance of Independent Colleges and Universities. He was also appointed to the board of directors of the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities, NAICU, which is also the official policy and lobbying arm of nonprofit higher education in the United States. Dr. Davis has won numerous awards, including awards of service from the NAACP and the Drum Major for Justice Award from the United Churches of Christ. He has also won recognitions for his interfaith work from the Islamic Society of North America and the United Methodist Church. Dr. Davis is a much sought after speaker on the topics of organizational change, ethical, moral, and principled leadership, and the need to transform higher education. So please help me give a warm Beaverton Rotary welcome to Dr. Davis for our presentation today.
Thank you, Dave. And I'm always embarrassed when I hear these things. I wish that you would share them with my mother. She's the one that gets excited about this, and I try my best to make her and my father proud of me. Thank you. Before I begin, I just have to remind Bob Brandon. First of all, I'm in Virginia, and the Civil War means something different here.
Yes.
Otherwise,
I understand.
Otherwise known as the War of Northern Aggression. I also want to point out two other facts, that the winningest football team in all of collegiate history is Linfield.
Yay.
The last time we lost a season, Eisenhower was president.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, and then the recent history, Bob, is that we actually have the largest video scoreboard in D3 history. Matter of fact, our scoreboard now is bigger than most D1 schools. So when we can play again, you're invited to be my guest. But I guess there's no point doing a raffle if the team always wins. So I get it, Bob. It's okay.
I understand. A true fan.
Yeah, indeed. I want to start with pandemics and protests and apocalyptic smoke. Oh my. Please forgive my opening remarks with a paraphrase refrain from a movie classic. For months now, it has felt like we have entered into a world of fantasy. And we're not in Kansas anymore. Very little is as it once was. And like Dorothy, Toto, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow, we have no choice but to face our fears together. We don't have a yellow brick road to follow, but we can devise our own roadmap. And in fact, Linfield has devised a roadmap to see itself through. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but I also want to talk about higher education in general. So Linfield has been very proactive in dealing with issues related to the pandemic. Quite frankly, we were the last institution in Oregon to close, and we were the first institution to announce that we were going to open. In both cases, people told me that I was crazy. And why would I not immediately send people home? And why are you bringing people back when we don't know? And why don't you go online? I have come to understand that what we do in education in general, and at Linfield in particular, is much more than educate students. We are also the only place where a significant number of our students receive healthcare. We are the only place where a significant number of our students receive 3 meals a day. No matter how bad they think dining hall food is, it is still food, arguably. We are the only place that students receive reliable internet service. We are the only place where students have access to the tools that allow them to have internet service. We are a large social service agency masquerading as an educational institution. And this is not just Linfield, but the demographics of this country should be informing the policy decisions that we're making about education. We are having conversations and we believe that online education is the answer. It's not. Because what we are depriving students of, not just in higher education, but in K through 12, by the way, I have an 11-year-old that I'm in the house with, is that we are depriving them of all the things that go into human development. Human development is so much more than facts, figures, history, and computation. Human development is social development. And so what we are looking at Linfield, what we should be considered on our wider policy decisions while maintaining safe protocols is how do we allow people to get the formal part of education at the same time that they are able to get the maturation process that comes with interacting with others. It is not an either or, and I feel sad that it has been presented as such. For the record, in case you are curious, presently we have 1,300 students on campus. Linfield has 2,000 students. We have had a total of 9 COVID-19 cases on the MAC campus and 5 in Portland. Some of you who are mathematically inclined will realize that that is less than 1%. Quite frankly, it's far less than 1%. There isn't a secret to doing this. There are a couple of things that we can do that I'm happy to share with you, which should be considered, which is that you have to follow science. I do not get into political debates about people's safety. I happen to be married to a professor of nursing who has a doctorate in nurse practitioner. She has a master's in public health. So I don't get to argue politics around health with her. I get to talk about science with her. And she serves as my informal advisor, as well as the many bright and talented people at Linfield University. And then number 2, which is something that unfortunately we are beginning to overlook in our society and is beginning to play out even over the past 24 hours. We are dividing ourselves by letters behind our names, whether it's a D or it's an R or an L in the case of a libertarian. We're dividing ourselves into blue states and red states. as opposed to the United States. And so at Linfield, we talk about being wildcats. We don't talk about what you believe is your particular tribal identity. We do not debate whether you are straight or gay. We don't debate whether you're conservative or liberal. What we asked every single student that came into our institution to do is to take an oath to protect the Wildcat family. Now pause for a second. Imagine, try not to sound like John Lennon here, but imagine a country that said, we are committed to looking after each other's health. And because we are looking after each other's health, I'm willing to make small sacrifices for the greater good. I know that this is a radical construct to believe that we should make sacrifices for the greater good, but I introduced you as an option for us to consider about how we interact with one another. And so our students are doing what they have to do. They're wearing masks, they're socially distancing, they're forming pods, and because students are doing their part, the university is doing this part. We have tested every single student that came to campus and do surveillance testing every other week on our campus. We set up cameras in classrooms for those who were still afraid to be in there, to allow them the option. But we allow people to do what they have to do within the constructs of good guidance from health. And so that has produced results that some of you may have read about in a letter that I signed on to an Oregonian that came out last Sunday, where we at smaller institutions are winning because we are much more than a place of education, and online education isn't the answer. It is part of an answer, it's not the answer. And we have to consider what is in the greater good. And there are things that we are doing that focus in on that in the sense of community, another novel construct. That we are in commune, we are in connection, we are there for one another. And that is also an educational experience. And so Dorothy, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion eventually realized there was no great wizard to fix what ailed them. They knew the challenges they faced, the qualities they sought, all could be addressed in themselves in the resources they already possess. Linfield University is discovering the same thing. I hope, I pray that the United States does the same. We at Linfield have found our resiliency and creativity to address the challenges we face. I hope and pray the United States does the same. At Linfield, we will do whatever it takes to survive and arise from a foundation that will allow us to thrive. I hope and I pray that the United States of America will do the same thing. David,
I unmute myself. Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. I'm sure there are probably some questions, so I'd like to like to see if anyone who has a question here. All right, Dr. or Renee.
I want to commend you for your efforts at your university to keep your numbers so low. I have been a professor at Georgia College, which sadly for 1 week was the top 10 in the nation. Now, partly not to be defensive, partly because we started way earlier, so a lot of other schools weren't yet open. However, we are still not testing our students unless they present themselves to be tested. Commendable what you have done. I literally am so pleased to hear that there are institutions like yours that care about your students, care about your staff, care about your faculty, to where you are creating these opportunities for education to occur in a situation that is safe in this day. So you're much to be commended. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Renee. All right, does anyone else have a comment or a question?
I figured there'd at least be one question about Linfield College or Linfield University or anything else that's there, but you know.
I have a
Sure.
question. I have
Hi,
a
Liz.
question. So remind us when Linfield became Linfield University, because it was Linfield College for a long time, and what was the process for that?
So that happened in July 1st of 2000. What year is this?
20.
That's exactly when it happened. So the history of Linfield is interesting because this is actually the third name.
Oh,
Dave, this is a pop quiz. The professor at heart. What was the original name of Linfield before it became Linfield?
Wesley? If I wasn't so old, I might remember.
So we actually started out as McMinnville College in high school. It was a seminary. It's most education institutions in this country that was a religiously affiliated to train teachers and preachers. And then a gift from a donor who sold land in Washington State, whose husband was a pastor, whose name was Linfield. And that gift, the sale of that land, allowed Linfield to become Linfield College. And so you have an institution with 162-year-old history. And why Linfield University, and what was the process? The process is this. All organizations have to respond to both internal and external changes in their environment, else they go the way of the dodo. You have to adapt. You adapt or you die. And so the demographics in our country is changing. What is coming in, and a lot of schools are looking at this in great dismay. Their enrollments are down across the board. They're having problems recruiting students. They have no idea how to respond. And what we did was look at the changing environment and said, here's what we do well. And as you're transforming any organization, you have to look at what you do well. And this is my approach to this. You look at what you do well, and then you build out from there. We offer a great liberal arts education. However, our enrollment had been declining for 6 years. Our board of trustees and authorized subsidies to the institution, and we depleted our reserve funds. This is about the time when they hired me, and it's always interesting when I come in and I get these challenges, but I like a challenge. And so it says, you fix it, you know, but we had an incredible foundation. We just need to restructure that foundation. And part of that was to offer our board of trustees a choice. And that choice was this. It was presented at the November 2018 board meeting. We could stay a small liberal arts institution and maybe have 600 or 700 students, or we can position ourselves for growth. And the board unanimously voted to position itself for growth. So starting in November 2018, begin to look at how we can grow. And so we began to align reality with what was perceived at the institute, perception of what Linfield really was. So a couple of things. I like data. I mean, I don't mind sharing it with you because it's in our fact book and we make this information available. 40% of our students were nursing students, 20% of our business were business students. The next largest category was students in psychology, followed by students in education. And so we quickly came to realize that we already had a school of nursing, which was started in 1982. We said we need to unleash the power of the business school. And we needed to develop relevant curriculum in the College of Arts and Science to empower those students who go into business or go into nursing. Because that's why they added the BSN in nursing, because they didn't add on more technical skills, they added on the things that we have come to call a liberal arts. And so that process included talking with alumni. You might have gotten a survey, you might have gotten a request for information. We talked with students, we talked to faculty, we talked to donors. And let me be clear, not everybody agreed. We are often attached to our histories. But I will offer this, and I'll own this perspective, is that as a leader, you are hired to lead, which means that you have to make tough decisions. Now, most of the information came in that was in support of this. So we maintain our mission, we honor our past, but we still have to move forward. And it has paid off. The year after we began to announce the changes, we had a 42% increase in enrollment.
Wow.
Even in the era of COVID, when other institutions are down 14, 15%, we are down exactly 1.7% in enrollment. The numbers that we're getting for 2021 are exceeding the numbers that we had 2 years ago when we had the largest incoming class. It's because we've made changes. We launched our first graduate program. We haven't had graduate programs at Linfield since the early 90s, when it was the School of Education, when it was an educational program and graduate. And so we're revising the curriculum. You have to adapt your curriculum to make it relevant. So there are some foundational things, but you have to make it relevant to the times. And so the process it's a major process. It's still undergoing. We had to change the bylaws of the college to the bylaws of the university. We had to restructure internal faculty governance structure. We're restructuring accounting systems to track all this stuff. It's a major undertaking, but we have a solid foundation, and that's allowing it to happen. I know that was a much longer answer than what you asked for, but I wanted to give you as complete a picture as possible. And feel free to contact me.
Thank you.
I have a question, Denise.
Bill, yes. And
Yeah,
then Ralph.
Yeah, just kind of key off your comments about maintaining relevance. What connections into the business community do you depend on, or do you value, or are you trying to nurture? I can imagine in the nursing, I can kind of think through the nursing connection, because that's pretty straightforward. It seems like, I'm sure it's not as easy as I'm making it out to be. But what about some of your other curricula? What are those type of connections that you really are striving to put in place, or that you already have and you can talk about?
I can talk about both, and I can talk about what we've done to adapt to this new environment. So we're in, the McMinnville campus is in Yamhill County. Yamhill County is known for wine. It was incredible that Domaine Serene and the Evanstad family and Ken Evanstad just passed actually last week, stepped up and gave us $6.5 million to endow the only liberal arts-based wine study program in the country. We can come spend 3 years at our institution, spend another year in France, and then spend another year and get a master's degree. I hear a lot of adults want to be a part of that program. We'll have to figure out how to make that happen. We have also launched a sports management program. We have very strong ties with Nike, but we're agnostic about this because I've also spent time with Zion, with Adidas, and we also work with Columbia Sportswear around our sports management program. You need a good team. You need a good team. And we just hired 2 incredible deans. One of those deans is Dean Jennifer Madden, who is coming to join us, who's going to be a powerhouse. She is reaching out, establishing connections to bring those in and to work with our Linfield students. We already had a solid reputation. We had already had connections in various parts, both in this country and internationally. The head of Foot Locker Europe is actually a Linfield grad. We are connecting those people to bring them in. One of the things that Dean Madden, and if anybody wants to meet with her, matter of fact, I recommend that she be a Rotary speaker. She's dynamic, an incredible leader, a dynamic speaker, and great ideas. one of the things that she is doing is making sure that we include the perspective of the business community on curriculum issues. And it's interesting because there's this interesting thing with higher education, particularly institutions that see themselves as elite, whatever that means, that, is, well, we have PhDs and we know what's going on. Well, the reality is, and I don't say this, and I say this as somebody who has a PhD, so I don't say this lightly, most people who are professors in college and university have never worked a real job. They've always been in academia. And I'm not dismissing that. I'm just saying it's a reality, which means that they often don't have connections with employers, which help you determine what employers are looking for. But I also need to say this, because I think this is important. You asked a question about business, but I have to wrap that within another question, another perspective, that our job is not just to prepare people to work. Our job is to prepare people to be effective citizens. And the nature of work changes. I mean, there's a conversation that I have now with kids that wouldn't have made sense 10 years ago. For instance, my TikTok is going viral. What does that mean in English? So how you prepare for that is to prepare people to think and innovate and be creative and adapt to an ever-changing world to be better. And I would love to talk with anybody who is looking for a well-qualified students who can think and solve problems. Because I came out, for those of you who don't know, you got my academic credentials, but I was a managing partner of a venture capital company. And I launched EDS's change management consulting practice. And so my head thinks from a business perspective, but we're serving a certain population of students, but we're trying to make them relevant to the world in which they're going into. And so we're seeking to connect more deeply, and I'll be happy to supply you with Jennifer Madden or any other speaker around things that are going on. Because one of the things I'm also committed to, which is our mission, which is connecting learning, life, and community. And even though Beaverton is a little ways away from both our Minville and Portland, is somewhere in between, and we would love to be more connected with the community. And as a Rotarian, I don't know if you know that also, Rotarian for years in Virginia, I think that what you're doing is good work, and like to continue to foster and support you in that type of way.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you.
Thank
you. Ralph had a question.
First, thank you very much, Professor Davis. This is one of the, Dr. Davis, President Davis, Your Majesty. I tease a little bit, but this is one of the most interesting, perceptive, and thrilling presentations I've heard of for some time with respect to academia. And I have so many questions. But just to narrow it down to one, it's my impression that teaching liberal arts or having students learn liberal arts is not what we call scalable. The teaching 10 is 10 times harder than 1. And it keeps going that way. And it seems to me that liberal arts itself is under very serious attack, not just in the United States, but worldwide. And yet, to me, it's fundamental to citizenship, a sense of history, and so forth. Is my perception wrong? And if so, where do we find hope with respect to a continuing expansion of the human experience?
Mr. Ralph, an incredible question. And so I'm going to come at this from two different angles. I like what you talked about citizens. We have forgotten, even in higher education, we have forgotten what liberal arts means. And so I had a classical education and I had to learn Latin. And I understood liberalis artis, which are the skills of free people coming out of the Roman Empire. You had to learn these things. The Romans only allowed citizens to learn rhetoric. They allowed them to learn the triumvirate, which became the quadriumvirate, and you can go look up these terms of what the original history is. But they were skills that were only taught to free people. And if you want to know the answer to why there are those who want to minimize what you learn in a classical liberal arts education, you just need to know what the purpose of a liberal arts education is. And I'll just leave that there for you to ponder. The other side of that equation is that it has to continue to be relevant, though. It's hard to get people excited about rhetoric, which is essential, which is an essential skill to be able to identify ill logic, to be understand ad hominem attacks. It takes presenting that in a way that makes sense. We have to teach history. It's become fashionable, and hopefully you'll allow me to say this, and forgive me, I haven't learned to censor myself as well as I should, particularly being a university president. But it's become fashionable to teach these niche classes as opposed to teaching things that should be fundamental to a well-educated person. For instance, I don't know how anyone graduates from a university who has been there for 4 years and who has not taken US and world history.
Yeah, I agree.
Not but let me be clear, not a sanitized version of that US
No.
history. Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And so you produce effective citizens with common body of knowledge that binds us together to move forward. But we can make it relevant. And I know it's nice to do all these niche things and all these other things dealing with, we talk about, I'm trying not to say certain words that have become fashionable in this era and things, but we do all these other things. But, I come from simple folks. My father never graduated, never got past 9th grade, and my mother didn't graduate high school. So I learned very simple concepts. And one of the simple concepts is that in order to have a strong building, you have to have a solid foundation. And we are not giving students the foundation. And so that is a failure on our part. That's a failure on our part. And so we have to make it relevant. For instance, I think the coolest thing in the world, I watch all these crazy zombie movies, The Walking Dead, but you know why? Because, so I'm teaching a leadership class in the spring. Clips from that, as well as Game of Thrones, are going to be in those classes because it is a study in group dynamics and leadership behavior. You have to get out of the freaking text. I'm sorry. You have to breathe. You have to get out of the textbook and make it relevant to the students who are coming into your class. You can't bemoan the fact that students watch TV or look at movies or watch this. You have to incorporate that and make it relevant to them. It is scalable if you present it in such a way that it's not just something, that's dead and going by and that has no meaning in the world. And we have to stop this conversation about the only reason for education is to just get a job, because jobs change. Jobs change. We have to educate people in a more dynamic manner. And I hope I'm making sense to some. And forgive me if I've offended anyone. It's never my intention. But it's so the simple answer is it's scalable if it's relevant. But guess what? That requires the faculty members to be engaged in the world. And so once you got your PhD was not the end of your education.
Right.
Thank you. Thank
Dr.
you so
Davis?
much.
One quick comment, Dr. Davis.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was just wondering, little side note here about your curriculum, because your music curriculum, because as I read, as I see your name, Miles Davis, I go back and I'm a throwback in Oregon, and I remember the great trumpeter Miles Davis, Dewey, I believe his name was, if I remember, Miles Davis III. He was such a fabulous great American trumpetist, I think, or musician, shall we say.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, I is there any relation? But also, how do you feel about music curriculum in schools today?
So my father was a major jazz fan. So when I came in the house, when they had stereo consoles,
Yeah.
you know, we had the music. So I always had Miles Davis, Charlie Parker, Mingus, and all were playing. So I was raised with this, and my father was a major. I got a chance to meet Miles in my life.
Oh, you did?
So we can have an offline conversation about that. One of the things that bemoans me, K through 12, as well as in higher education, this is why business doesn't directly translate in. So even though I told you about my business background, you cannot run a university like a pure institution unless you want to embrace the concept of loss leader. There are things that you need to learn for the benefit of society. And art and music are one of those things, or two of those things.
Precisely.
You know, and so the fact that students don't get a chance to be exposed to these things is a crime. I mean, when we start, so in Virginia, they start teaching to the standard test, they cut out the music program, they cut out the art. There's no expression. On top of cutting out gym, and we wonder why kids are obese. There are some things that we are just doing that are, we're destroying ourselves by doing these things. And so Anna Song, who's a hero of mine, who heads the music department at Linfield, I include her. When I gave the speech at the First Baptist Street Church, I made sure that our choir was there to perform, to bring her along with me. We hold performances in Ice Auditorium and Hillside. The senior center comes over and listens. Music. And we have Anton Beloff, who does opera, incredible voice. I'm a big supporter of it. And the institution I came from, which was Chandler University, had a conservatory of music. So I'm steeped in those traditions. And the first thing that I did, I arrived on campus July 17th, July 19th. Me, my 11-year-old daughter went to see the Marriage of Figaro. I thought that she would be bored. They did the Marriage of Figaro in Italian. She sat through the entire 3-hour production and loved it. We have to expose children to this. And sometimes it's like putting that medicine in the applesauce. You have to get them to take it. But she has fallen in love with opera. She went to see the next one she didn't like as much, but at least she's been exposed like I was exposed.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. I was always a fan of Miles Davis and his great jazz, American jazz. I loved it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. Any other questions? Would you
Yeah.
be able to stay on afterwards?
Dr.
Questions?
Yeah, Dr. Davis.
Natalie?
Yes.
We need
Okay.
we need to close out, but if Dr. Davis, if you have a few minutes to stay after for questions, that would be great.
I will, and I'll stay after, particularly to address Natalie's question.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Dr.
so
Davis,
much.
yeah. Actually, this is not question. This is compliment, but this is a real compliment. You spoke from my heart because you spoke about solid education and PhD. But I have myself PhD, and now after many years, I realized PhD not is only science. PhD helping us how we can learn, and PhD really creating foundation and potential for, I think, person who well-educated person, he can do anything. He can be flexible. And now I have 6 grandchildren, and my concern, because too much, this is global problem. Children working with devices, they forgot typing. Many children now ignoring art, so on. But I don't know who tell this, but it says music and mathematics creating skeleton in human life. It doesn't matter to whom you become. Now you have solid foundation, and I'm so thankful for today's your presentation, and I completely 100% agree with you, because this new generation, our future, and sometimes they're not getting right now solid education because situation, new life, they great generation, great children, but I think parents, schools need to pay more attention to foundation. And also last things, from my life, I can tell music, art, this is reliable friend in any challenges of our life. Thank you very much. It is wonderful.
Just out of
presentation.
curiosity, what's the accent underneath that, Natalie? What's the accent?
Accent Armenian. I'm Armenian.
Right there. All right, Denise is trying, like, it's like you're running over time. I was like, get out of here. If there are a few people who want me to stay on for a few more minutes, I'm more than happy to do so. But I know that Rotary has a program, and I want to respect the time of those who took time out of their lunch or whatever time to be here. But I'm happy to spend a few more minutes talking there. As you can see, I get very passionate about this. Education is transformative to me. It transformed the life of a poor inner city kid. And I'm concerned that we're losing a lot of that ability to produce economic mobility as well as uplift in our society. So I'll stay on. But Denise, it's all yours. I'll stop talking.
Thank you so much. I love your passion. It's amazing.